Have you ever noticed that the moment you walk through the doors of a major metropolitan transit hub, say Grand Central in New York, or I don't know, Shinjuku in Tokyo, or
Mhm.
even just a bustling regional bus terminal during rush hour, your brain just sort of physically feels different.
Oh, absolutely. It is a completely visceral shift.
Right. It's instant. It is like your mental processing suddenly drops from this high-speed fiber optic connection down to a struggling 2G network.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
And you're trying to download this massive encrypted file while standing in a concrete tunnel. The sensory assault is just immediate.
It really is an incredibly accurate way to describe that cognitive bottleneck. And, it happens because these spaces, fundamentally, they are hostile to individual human focus.
Hostile. That's a strong word, but yeah, it feels hostile.
Well, think about it. Transit hubs are masterpieces of industrial engineering,
Right.
but they are designed for macro-level throughput.
Right. Not for like micro level human comfort.
Exactly. The
Hmm.
architecture, the harsh lighting, the acoustics, all of it is optimized to move hundreds of thousands of biological units from point A to point B as efficiently as possible.
Biological units. I love that. Makes me feel very important.
Right, well, to this system, you as an individual commuter, you are just a fluid dynamic to be managed.
Wow, just a fluid dynamic. And yet we are expected to navigate this overwhelming, chaotic system using one of the most fragile tools at our disposal.
Which is language?
Exactly, language. So welcome, by the way, to today's deep dive. I am so glad you, the listener, are here with us. We know you are a learner. You want to gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, and crucially, without feeling completely overwhelmed by the details.
Which is exactly what we are going to do today.
Yes, we are, because today's mission involves unpacking an excerpt from a seemingly simple text. It's called The Commuter's Guide to Essential Transit English.
Specifically, we are looking at the section focused on taking the bus or train.
Right. And on the surface, I mean, let's be honest, this looks like a basic vocabulary list.
It does. It really does.
You see words like ticket, platform, announcement. But we are going to read between the lines today. Because when you strip away that academic framing, what this guide is actually outlining is a psychological survival manual.
A survival manual for the modern commuter. I like that.
Yeah, it's a breakdown of how we use specific verbal interventions to basically hack an automated, overwhelming system and assert our own spatial agency.
Precisely. Because we tend to view language learning or even just everyday communication as a static exercise, right?
Yeah, like sitting in a quiet room with a textbook.
Exactly. Yeah. You picture a notebook, a clear exchange of ideas over a cup of coffee. But the vocabulary of transit exists entirely in the realm of high-stakes, dynamic execution.
High stakes for sure. I mean, if you misuse a word in a coffee shop, what happens? You get the wrong pastry.
You get a croissant instead of a muffin. You survive.
Right. But if you misunderstand a spatial directive in a major rail network,
Then you might end up in a completely different geographical region, stranded at midnight in the freezing rain.
exactly, the margins for error are razor thin, and the environment is actively working against your ability to process information.
Which brings us to the really fascinating climax of what we'll be exploring later in this deep dive.
Oh, yes. The Bruce scenario. I can't wait to get to this. We are going to look at a scenario from our source material involving a commuter named Bruce.
Poor Bruce.
Poor Bruce is right. He is going to find himself in a situation where the entire architecture of his commute just collapses.
Completely falls apart.
And he narrowly avoids a total disaster purely because of how the auditory environment of a train station interacts with human cognition.
It's a brilliant case study, honestly. Shows how systems fail us when we rely too heavily on our own internal planning while just sort of ignoring the external reality of the physical space.
It really is the ultimate stress test. But before we get to Bruce's near miss, we have to start where every journey begins, right?
Exact at the beginning.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. The very first concept our source material addresses is the distinction between a one-way and a round-trip ticket.
The basics.
Yeah, and I know for anyone listening who has ever taken public transit anywhere in the world, you know what these words mean. It feels incredibly rudimentary.
It feels like day one vocabulary.
Right. But let's look at the actual mechanics of what is happening when you approach a kiosk or open an app on your phone to secure that ticket. It's like you're signing a micro contract for your day.
A microcontract. That is exactly what it is. It is the foundational transaction of mobility.
Okay, so break that down for us. Why is this the foundational transaction?
Well, to understand why this is the starting point of the guide, you kind of have to look at the history of transit systems.
Oh, I love a good history tangent. Let's hear it.
So before the mid-19th century, paying for transport was just chaotic.
Like, how chaotic?
It was essentially haggling with a coach driver. You'd say, take me to this town, and they'd say a price, and you'd argue. There was no set system. But then in the 1840s, a man named Thomas Edmondson invented the standardized cardboard railway ticket.
Okay, the little thick cardboard ones.
Right. And it was a revolution, but not just in ticketing. It was a revolution in data collection.
Wait, data collection in the 1840s?
Exactly. For the first time, a transit authority could track passenger volume, they could balance loads across their rail network, and they could audit their conductors to make sure no one was stealing fares.
Oh, wow. So the ticket wasn't just a receipt for the passenger?
No, it was a piece of logistical data for the machine.
Okay, so flash forward to today. When you are standing at that screen and you are prompted to choose between one-way and round trip, you aren't just making a personal financial choice.
Not at all.
You are feeding the algorithm. You are formally declaring your spatial intentions to the network so that the network can organize itself around you.
Around you and the thousands of other people doing the exact same thing at that exact moment.
That is wild to think about. It's a spatial contract.
Yes. The system requires you to articulate your future. Think about the psychological weight of that for a second.
It is heavy.
A public transit network is a massive, incredibly expensive, highly tuned machine. It simply cannot operate on ambiguity. It demands certainty.
So the system forces you, the commuter, to resolve your own ambiguity before it even grants you access to the platform.
Exactly. You have to commit.
That shifts the perspective entirely. If we think about it that way, a round-trip ticket isn't just buying 2 rides at once for a slight discount. It's a safety net. It's a closed loop.
A closed loop.
It's a commitment to a return vector. You are telling the system, hey, I am borrowing space on your outbound capacity today, and I am officially reserving space on your inbound capacity at a later date.
You are a known quantity. It's a localized temporary deployment of a human.
Right, and conversely, the one-way ticket is an open loop. It's a commitment to the unknown.
It is a one-time injection of a passenger into the system with absolutely no guaranteed extraction point.
So from a load balancing perspective, a network of exclusively one-way travelers would be highly volatile,
Incredibly difficult to predict, yes.
And from the commuter's perspective, buying that one-way ticket represents a definitive A to B movement, a definitive relocation. You are actively severing your geographic tether to your origin point.
Which makes total sense why a transit guide, especially one for English learners, would prioritize this specific vocabulary above almost everything else.
Yeah, because if you are a learner and you are operating in a second language, or even just navigating an unfamiliar ticketing interface in a foreign country, confusing these two terms doesn't just cost you a few extra dollars.
No, the financial hit is the least of your worries.
It creates a critical mismatch between your internal geographic plan and the external contract you just signed with the machine.
Precisely. If you buy a one-way when you genuinely meant round trip, the system immediately wipes you from its predictive return ledger.
It forgets you exist.
Exactly. When you show up later to go home, the system says, I have no record of your intention to be here. You are an anomaly.
And anomalies in transit systems are penalized.
Oh, heavily penalized. Usually financially, you have to buy a much more expensive last-minute fare, but sometimes logistically. You might find the return train is totally sold out.
Because the machine is completely indifferent to your intended meaning. It doesn't care what you meant to do.
It only processes the executed syntax of the transaction.
So bringing this back to the learner, this is why mastering this specific terminology is less about just knowing English flashcards and more about ensuring your intended reality aligns perfectly with the system's ledger. It prevents massive headaches before the journey even starts.
It really does. But once that transaction is complete,
right, the challenge shifts.
It shifts from intention to execution. You have the ticket, but now you have to navigate the physical space.
Okay, so let's get into that. You've successfully negotiated the contract. You hold the ticket. Maybe it's a QR code on your phone, or maybe it's a physical piece of paper. You officially have your spatial authorization.
But the ticket itself has zero kinetic energy.
Right. It doesn't magically move you. It just gives you the legal right to be moved.
Exactly. Now, you have to actually step into the labyrinth and execute the plan.
And this is where the source text moves to its next vital pieces of transit English, which are asking for arrival times and asking for platform numbers.
The mechanics of space and time. This is where the true friction of commuting occurs.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I want to push back on the text here a little bit, or at least I want to challenge how we view this vocabulary in the modern era.
Okay, let's hear the challenge.
The guide frames platform numbers and arrival times as things you need to know how to ask a human being for. But let's be real for a second.
Sure.
I have a smartphone in my pocket. I use Google Maps or City Mapper or, the local transit authority's proprietary app. I honestly cannot remember the last time I walked up to a human being in a train station and verbally asked, "Excuse me, what platform is the 4.15 to Boston departing from?"
That is a very fair point.
So my question to you is this vocabulary actually obsolete? Are we studying a dead language here? Is this really about directions, or is it actually about seeking certainty in an environment designed to be confusing?
It is a totally valid challenge, and it's actually one that urban planners and transit authorities are actively debating right now.
Really? They're debating whether to even have information desks.
Oh, constantly. They ask themselves, why maintain expensive human-facing information desks or teach verbal wayfinding when the digital overlay of the city is just so comprehensive?
Right, it seems redundant.
It seems that way, yes.
Yeah.
But here is why this vocabulary is absolutely not obsolete. Digital systems are representations of reality. They are not reality itself.
Oh, that's a key distinction.
And in complex transit environments, the digital layer frequently, and sometimes spectacularly, detaches from the physical layer.
Okay, unpack that for me. How does the digital layer detach?
Well, think about the physical constraints of a major transit hub. We are talking about millions of tons of steel, incredibly thick reinforced concrete, subterranean levels that go down stories into the earth.
Right, like the deep tube lines in London.
Exactly. And on top of that, you have heavy ultramagnetic interference from the electrical grids of the trains themselves. These are highly, highly adversarial environments for wireless communication.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Your smartphone's GPS signal is just bouncing wildly underground. Cellular data bandwidth becomes completely choked when, say, 5,000 people are standing on the exact same concourse refreshing their transit apps simultaneously because a train is delayed.
Oh man, I've definitely experienced that panic. You are staring at your app and the little blue dot showing your location is just wildly teleporting across the map.
Yes. Or the departure board on your screen just hangs on a spinning loading wheel and the train is supposed to leave in 2 minutes.
It is the most helpless feeling.
Precisely. In those moments, the digital overlay collapses. It fails you. Furthermore, you have to understand how those third-party apps work. They rely on APIs, application programming interfaces, which are fed by the transit authority's central servers.
Okay.
There is a latency built into that system. It is not instantaneous. If a train suddenly breaks down on platform 3, and the local dispatcher has to frantically reroute the next incoming train to platform 7, that decision happens physically and verbally in the control tower first.
Right, the humans make the call.
Exactly. And it might take 2 to 3 minutes for that data change to propagate through the API, hit the server, and update the third-party app on your phone.
2 to 3 minutes.
And in the fast-paced environment of transit, a 3-minute data lag is an absolute eternity. It is the literal difference between making your connection and missing it entirely.
Wow. So when the digital screen fails, or when you even just suspect it's lagging because of a delay, you are forced right back into the physical environment.
Exactly. When the API fails, human language becomes the only reliable API.
Oh, I love that. Human language is the emergency API.
It really is. You have to locate a station employee or even just another commuter who looks like they know what they are doing and initiate a verbal query. You are seeking what data scientists call ground truth.
Ground truth.
Yes. The app is a prediction based on data. The physical train arriving at a concrete slab, that is the ground truth. So knowing how to ask for platform numbers and arrival times is your emergency analog backup system.
It is how you bypass the failing digital infrastructure and tap directly into the human awareness of the space.
Exactly. And if you are an English learner, having the confidence to deploy these specific phrases is incredibly empowering. You aren't at the mercy of a spinning loading wheel.
That makes the act of asking a question in a train station feel much more profound than just a basic language exercise. It's not just a polite request for directions. It's a necessary verification protocol.
It is an act of taking control of your environment. You're actively cross-referencing your digital data with the physical reality.
And it reminds me, I think you mentioned this before I started recording, it connects to some architectural concepts, right?
Oh yes, it connects directly to the architectural concept of wayfinding. In the 1960s, there was this urban planner named Kevin Lynch, and he wrote extensively about how people build mental maps of cities.
Like using landmarks and stuff.
Exactly, using paths, edges, districts, nodes, and landmarks. Now, a transit hub is a massive, highly concentrated node. But modern transit architecture often employs a psychological principle called progressive disclosure.
Progressive disclosure. Okay, have I experienced this?
You definitely have. Have you noticed that when you walk into a massive airport or a mega train station, they don't give you all the information you need right at the entrance?
Well, now that you mention it, yes. You walk in the front doors, and the main gigantic board just tells you A, B, or C concourse. It doesn't tell you the exact gate for your specific flight until you get much closer.
Right, and they do that on purpose. Progressive disclosure prevents cognitive overload. If they gave you all the information at the door, people would just freeze in panic.
Ah, so they only give you the spatial data necessary for your immediate next decision.
Precisely. They funnel you toward Concourse A. Once you finally reach Concourse A, a new digital board reveals that you need Section 3. And only when you actually reach Section 3 do you finally get the actual platform or gate number.
They're literally stringing you along a path. It's like breadcrumbs.
It is efficient for crowd control, but it relies on a perfect chain of information.
But if you are in a rush, or if that chain of progressive disclosure is broken by, say, a malfunctioning digital sign or temporary construction blocking a hallway.
You are completely stranded. You don't have the mental map because the building specifically refused to give it to you.
Oh, man. Which is exactly why you must be able to assert yourself verbally.
Yes. If you were learning the language, practicing the phrase, "Excuse me, which platform for the inbound train," isn't just a classroom exercise to get a good grade.
No, it is giving yourself the linguistic tool to break through the building's progressive disclosure.
Exactly. You are demanding the final data point you need right now instead of waiting for the building to reveal it. You are refusing to be passively funneled by the architecture.
Okay, I want to focus on that cognitive overload aspect you just mentioned, because this directly sets up the scenario with our guy Bruce.
Yes. Bruce's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad commute.
Exactly. Because think about it. You've got the ticket. You successfully bought the round trip. You've navigated the progressive disclosure of the wayfinding architecture. You used your emergency analog backup system to ask for the platform. You were standing exactly where you were supposed to be at the exact time you were supposed to be there.
You have successfully aligned your internal plan with the external ground truth.
And yet, and this is the terrifying part, the system can still completely pull the rug out from under you.
Because, as we said, the ground truth in a transit system is never permanently fixed. It is a living, breathing organism that constantly mutates.
It mutates based on mechanical failures or sudden weather events or just plain human error.
Always.
So let's get into the text itself. The source material provides this brilliant, highly condensed scenario. I'm just going to read it exactly as it's written. It says, Bruce is at a busy train station and almost boards the wrong train because he missed an announcement.
That's it. One sentence.
It's one sentence. But structurally, if we really unpack it, it's a masterclass in how commuting disasters actually happen in real life.
It really is.
Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say Bruce read the map wrong. It doesn't say he bought the wrong ticket. He did everything right. But he failed at the very last hurdle, which is the auditory environment.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this scenario perfectly illustrates a psychological phenomenon known as inattentional deafness.
Wait, okay. I've heard of inattentional blindness.
Right, the famous gorilla experiment.
Oh, yeah. For the listeners who don't know, that's the famous psychology experiment where people are asked to watch a video of people passing a basketball, and they are told to count the passes. And because their visual focus is so intensely locked on counting the ball, they completely fail to see a person in a full gorilla suit walk right through the middle of the game.
Which sounds impossible until you actually take the test and miss the gorilla yourself.
Exactly. So that's visual. How does that relate to Bruce?
Well, your brain has a finite amount of working memory and attentional bandwidth. It is a zero-sum game. When you overload one sensory input, the brain ruthlessly culls processing power from other senses to compensate.
I see.
Inattentional deafness is the exact same mechanism as the gorilla experiment, but applied to sound.
So his brain just muted the audio.
Essentially, yes. When your visual cortex and your executive function are redlining, say, because you are navigating a dense crowd, you are trying to read complex signs in a second language, you are monitoring a flickering departure board, and you are worrying about whether someone is going to trip over your luggage.
Your brain is maxed out.
Your brain literally stops processing background audio to save energy. The sound waves physically hit your eardrum, the mechanics of hearing occur, but the auditory cortex in your brain simply drops the data packets. You do not consciously hear it.
Wow. So when the text says Bruce is at a busy train station, that adjective isn't just setting the scene. That word busy is actually the murder weapon in this scenario.
It absolutely is. The busyness, the sensory overload is what caused the deafness.
That is wild.
But the busyness is only the catalyst. We also have to factor in the physical space itself, the absolute nightmare that is the acoustic engineering of public transit spaces.
Oh, true. Train stations are generally built out of very hard reflective materials, right?
Exactly. Think about it. Concrete floors, exposed steel girders, massive glass walls, ceramic tiles everywhere. These materials have terrible acoustic absorption coefficients. They reflect everything.
So when the automated voice speaks over the public address system,
The sound waves bounce off every single hard surface in that cavernous room, creating these massive overlapping reverberations.
it creates that garbled, booming echo, like wah, wah, wah. You can't understand a word.
Acoustic engineers actually measure this using a metric called the Speech Transmission Index, or STI.
STI.
An STI of 1.0 is perfect clarity, like listening to a high-end speaker in a soundproof studio. Many older subway stations or cavernous historic train halls have an STI of around 0.3 or 0.4,
Which means what, practically?
which is considered functionally unintelligible for complex sentences.
Functionally unintelligible.
Yes, you are hearing the vowels because they carry acoustic energy, but the sharp consonants are entirely masked by the reverb and the ambient noise of screeching metal wheels and thousands of footsteps.
Okay, so let's put ourselves in Bruce's shoes for a second. Let's really paint this picture. He's standing on the platform. His working memory is completely maxed out by the visual clutter and the stress of travel. He's likely experiencing severe inattentional deafness. And then the transit authority attempts to communicate a critical dynamic change to his reality. Maybe a sudden platform alteration, or telling him an express train is now running local, and they are trying to communicate this using an auditory system with a terrible speech transmission index.
It's a recipe for disaster. And we must add the final critical layer to this anatomy of a near miss, the linguistic layer.
Right.
The fact that this scenario is presented in the Commuter's Guide to Essential Transit English strongly implies that Bruce is likely processing all of this information in a second language.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that changes the math completely.
It changes everything. Cognitive load theory dictates that processing a second language requires significantly more executive function than processing your native tongue.
Because it's not automatic.
Right. Your brain has to actively decode the syntax, translate the meaning, and retrieve vocabulary from long-term memory, whereas native language processing is largely automated and happens in the background.
So, poor Bruce. He is in a hostile acoustic environment. His attention is totally saturated by visual stimuli. The audio signal from the speaker is severely degraded by reverb, and he has to translate that degraded signal into another language in real time.
It is a perfect storm for a critical failure.
And the text says he almost boards the wrong train. I mean, that is the terrifying part of this scenario, because the physical act of boarding a train is the ultimate commitment.
It is, once you cross that threshold.
Exactly. You are stepping over the gap. The doors are going to slide shut behind you with that hiss, creating a literal physical seal. You are locking your physical body into a metal tube that is about to accelerate in a specific geographic direction at high speed.
And if you get on the wrong train, you cannot just turn around and walk back to where you were.
No. You are trapped in the system's incorrect vector until the next stop. And depending on the train, that next stop could be 50 miles away in the wrong direction.
What this scenario reveals, fundamentally, is the hierarchy of truth in a transit system.
The hierarchy of truth. I love how you phrase that. We talked earlier about how the physical ground truth supersedes the digital app on your phone. But within the station itself, there is another hierarchy.
There is. The auditory announcement is the supreme overriding authority.
Wait, more than the printed signs, more than the glowing digital board right in front of your face on the platform.
Absolutely. Because printed signs are entirely static. And as we discussed with the API lag, digital boards can fall behind the dispatcher's real-time decisions. When a crisis happens or a schedule changes by the second, the human dispatcher reaches for the microphone.
The live auditory announcement is the fastest way to distribute an immediate reality update to a mass population.
Exactly. If the digital board says train to London, but the voice on the loudspeaker says the train currently at platform 4 is out of service, please stand clear, the voice is the absolute truth.
So Bruce missed the voice. He missed the ultimate truth. He was operating on an outdated reality. He looked at his ticket, looked at the train sitting at his platform, and assumed the past plan was still the current reality.
He almost boarded a false future simply because his brain dropped the auditory data packet.
It highlights a crucial lesson for anyone navigating these spaces, especially our learner listening right now. Passive commuting is dangerous commuting.
Extremely dangerous.
You cannot allow the physical environment to lull you into a false sense of security just because you are standing in the right geographical spot. You have to maintain active vigilance.
Always.
But how do you actually do that? I mean, practically speaking, if the environment is literally designed to cause cognitive overload and the acoustics are terrible and you are functioning in a second language, how do you prevent yourself from becoming Bruce? You can't just tell someone, hey, listen harder.
No, you can't. That doesn't work. But you can train your selective attention. Psychologists call it the cocktail party effect.
Oh, I've heard of this. It's how you can hear your own name spoken across a noisy room at a party, even if you weren't listening to that conversation.
Exactly. It's the brain's ability to focus one's auditory attention on a particular important stimulus while filtering out a massive range of other stimuli. In a transit context, you have to train your brain to recognize the precursor signals of an announcement.
You mean the little chime, like the bing bong before they speak?
Exactly. That chime is not decorative. It is not there to sound nice. It is a highly engineered acoustic trigger. It is designed to slice through the ambient noise and signal to your brain. Drop your visual processing, pause your internal monologue, and allocate your working memory to the auditory cortex immediately.
Wow.
When you hear that chime, you have to consciously break your visual fixation. Stop looking at your phone, stop staring at the crowd, and actively listen. You are essentially forcing your brain to temporarily bypass the inattentional deafness.
That makes total sense. You are using the system's own alert mechanism to manage your own cognitive load. It's like setting an interrupt protocol in your own brain. If chime sounds, then listen.
Yes. And here's the best part for someone who is learning the language. You don't need to understand every single word of the garbled announcement.
Really? Because that sounds stressful.
No, you just listen for the keywords. You listen for the numbers. If you are waiting for the 5.5 tune to Chicago, and the garbled loudspeaker says static 5, static Chicago, static.track 9, you have enough data fragments to realize your reality might have just shifted.
Right, you piece together the fragments.
And at that point, you return to the earlier vocabulary we discussed. You find a human, and you verify.
You ask for the platform number, you seek the ground truth. It's a complete loop of survival skills.
It is a continuous loop of spatial negotiation.
This has completely changed how I view something as mundane as a bus ticket or a station announcement. I mean, let's pull all these threads together to synthesize what we've actually uncovered today. Because we started with a simple vocabulary guide, and we've ended up deconstructing the cognitive architecture of urban mobility.
It is a journey that really mirrors the commute itself, doesn't it?
It does. We began with the intentionality of the ticket, the critical choice between a one-way and a round trip. We learned this isn't merely a purchase, it is a data transaction.
Right. It is where you, the commuter, assert your parameters and sign a spatial contract with a massive logistical machine. It requires understanding the vocabulary of commitment to ensure your intended reality is logged correctly in the system's ledger.
From there, we moved into the execution phase, navigating the labyrinth of the station. We discussed how modern digital tools, while incredibly useful, are inherently fragile.
They suffer from API lag and signal degradation underground.
Exactly. And when that digital overlay fails, the physical wayfinding architecture, which is deliberately designed to withhold information through progressive disclosure, can leave you completely stranded.
Which is why the ability to verbally ask for arrival times and platform numbers remains a vital, non-obsolete survival tool. It is your analog backup system. It is how you bypass the failing tech and the confusing architecture to demand real-time ground truth data from the human network.
And finally, we examined the ultimate stress test through the cautionary tale of Bruce. Bruce did everything right, but almost boarded the wrong train because he fell victim to the hostile environment of the station itself.
The Bruce scenario perfectly illustrated the hidden dangers of cognitive overload, inattentional deafness, and the terrible acoustic engineering of transit hubs.
It proved that in the hierarchy of transit information, the dynamic, real-time auditory announcement is the supreme truth. It overrides all static plans and digital predictions.
Which means knowing the vocabulary is utterly useless if you don't maintain the active auditory vigilance required to intercept those reality updates.
It's a remarkable chain of dependencies: intention, navigation, verification, and vigilant execution.
The ultimate takeaway here, especially for the learner, is that transit English, or honestly, the functional language of any complex system, is not about memorizing definitions. It is about acquiring the operational tools necessary to exert agency. When you master these concepts, you aren't just learning how to ride a train. You are learning how to refuse to be passively processed by a machine.
You are learning how to actively negotiate your own survival in an overwhelming space.
That is the perfect way to frame it. You are negotiating your survival.
But, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought, a slight pivot to the future based on everything we've analyzed today.
Oh, I'm curious where you are taking this.
Well, we spent a massive amount of time deconstructing Bruce's near miss, and our conclusion rested heavily on the idea that the shared auditory space, the loudspeaker announcement, is the ultimate ground truth.
Yes, it is the final safety net.
It is a communal broadcast that, if you are actively listening, saves you from disaster. But look at the current trajectory of technology and urban design.
The shift toward hyper-personalization.
Exactly. Transit authorities are quietly but rapidly trying to phase out the public address system. Yeah. They're expensive to maintain, the acoustics are terrible, as we discussed, and they contribute to the overall noise pollution of the space. Instead, the focus is entirely on silent, app-based digital notifications.
Oh, I see. The privatization of public space through individual data streams.
Yes. The goal is to push the platform change directly to your smartwatch, to send a silent vibration to your phone that the train is delayed. So here is my provocative question for you to mull over. What happens when the public square of transit loses its shared auditory channel?
That is a fascinating question.
If Bruce lived 10 or 15 years from now, there wouldn't even be a spoken announcement for him to miss. The system would rely entirely on his digital device receiving the push notification.
Which, as we discussed at length, is highly vulnerable to signal loss, dead batteries, and API failures.
Exactly. We are moving from a state of shared auditory vigilance to a state of isolated digital monitoring. If the communal loudspeaker goes silent, we lose the shared reality of the platform entirely.
We just become a collection of individuals staring down at our palms, completely dependent on our own private, fragile digital tethers to the network.
Will the essential transit English of tomorrow merely be learning how to navigate the settings menus of 20 different local transit apps?
It seems likely.
And if your battery dies in this silent, digitized megastation, how will you ever know what the ground truth actually is?
It suggests a future where to be disconnected digitally is to be literally physically lost. The analog backup system we praised so much today might simply cease to exist.
It is a chilling thought for anyone who appreciates the safety net of just being able to ask a human being for the truth. It's a lot to process the next time you find yourself standing under the glowing departure boards, waiting for that familiar chime to echo through the concourse.
Absolutely.
Because, as we've learned today, the world of public transportation is anything but a safe, static environment. It is a constantly shifting puzzle of data, acoustics, and human cognition. Keep your head on a swivel, manage your cognitive load, and never completely trust the digital map. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.